This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
Leaders have some outstanding characteristics and attributes that can be seen in their actions, decisions, and influence on their followers. Frederick Douglass was an American orator, writer, social reformer, and political leader who portrayed strong leadership characteristics and attributes. With his leadership, he was able to fight against slavery in the United States. The main character traits that can be observed in Frederick are self-confidence, emotional stability, and selflessness. This paper discusses 3 leadership personality traits portrayed by the leader. Self-confidence. Frederick was a slave in America but managed to escape from a slavery camp by boarding a train to Havre de Grace, Maryland. This was after 3 attempts to escape. After the successful one, his leadership traits started to become more open to the public domain. His efforts to deliver the slaves from the oppressions they were facing from their masters portray a person with self-confidence and belief in himself. As a leader, he formed the abolitionist movement and started writing materials that counterattacked advocates of the slave trade and slavery. From this first move, his character to question and demand his followers' rights is seen. He stood strong against those people who were of the view that slaves had no intellectual capacity to function. When presenting his arguments using human rights meetings and his anti-slavery writings, he used his eloquence to defend the rights of slaves. During the time, the slave trade was seen as legitimate, and any slave who dared to rebel or argue against the trade was seen as an enemy of the states. However, using his self-confidence, charisma, and boldness, he stood against the allegations to fight for the rights of staff. The leader's self-confidence was seen in his strong belief that blacks, Native Americans, females, and Asians have equality. This was in the times when the Americans had special rights, and they could override other people. When he was addressing people, either slaves or the Northerners, he was never being arrogant but ensured that he drove the point that he wanted. He was described by many as a man of humility. The leader did not discriminate against either race, but he was advocating for equality and respect for humanity. His first book, called The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, it's one of the most exciting materials in history. Where he describes how he attempted to escape in vain, it portrayed a leader who was driven by self-confidence and the need to try again and again. Decisiveness. The success that Frederick got was based on these strategic and timely decisions that he had to make at different times. When making decisions, he was making decisions that were sound and applicable in the environment that he was operating in at a certain period. When presenting his decisions, he portrayed a person of high moral standing and one who clearly understood the decision that he wanted to make at a particular time. The book was so humorous that he feared that he would be enslaved again for the weaknesses that he portrayed in the American lifestyle and how he was able to trick them with the attire he wore when he was boarding a train to escape. In the most remarkable speech that he gave on July 4, 1852, on an American National Independence Day, the leader stood composed and used selected words that portrayed high intelligence and a high degree of quality decisions as well as stability. He condemned the lords for using the system to oppress slaves. He was confident enough to address in a negative speech or a speech that differed from what had been expected by the inviters. When he was presenting a speech, he was able to move the crowds and command respect and followership. He could talk of a serious thing with much humor and emotional intelligence that even the people whom the speech was targeted to attacking feel appreciated. Selflessness. When Frederick was escaping from his masters, he was using plans that involved getting people's confidence to run away. He lived in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and in New York, which were new places where he needed to adopt and develop friends who would stand by his side when he stood against oppression that was evident in the economy. To be the leader that he was, he needed extensive support from the people that he represented or whom he fought for their rights. With this, he ought to be a person who was sociable and had good people skills. The success of Frederick could be interpolated in that line. The drive that kept him moving was his selflessness and desire to serve others. To get the education that seemed then limited to African Americans, more so if one was a slave, he was driven by his enthusiasm to learn to read and inform himself on the oppressions they were going through and how he would liberate his people. The leader ensured he attended abolitionists' meetings and subscribed to William Lloyd Garrison's weekly journal, The Liberator. This was a show of determination and hunger for knowledge, self-improvement, and working for the good of the general population. His selflessness can be seen in his books and speeches, where he talked of matters and issues that were endangering his life but did the same for the good of the people. He was willing and ready to lose his life for the liberty and freedom of the majority. If you want to find more works like this assessment on Frederick Douglass leadership personality traits, head over to ivypanda.com. It has a collection of free samples with thousands of submissions covering virtually all academic subjects. No registration required to access it.